Hi, Redeemer family and Redeemer kids. I don't know about you, but I miss us getting together every Sunday and other times throughout the week. And in this time of social distancing or physical distancing, I thought maybe we could gather together around a good book. So, one of my recent favorite children's books is The Biggest Story. It's written by Kevin DeYoung, and it says how the snake crusher brings us back to the garden. I love it because it gives the big picture of the whole story of the Bible, kind of from the beginning to the end, but then it also has some really fun artwork and just some beautiful colors. Like, I love this picture of the lion, and there are more there, but I thought I could read a chapter at a time for us, and then maybe you could talk about it with your parents and what is important to you and what stood out to you from the story. So, chapter 1. Once upon a time, there lived a man and a woman. They were the happiest people on the planet. True, they were the only people on the planet, but they were still terrifically happy. Their names were Adam and Eve, and God made them. And He made them in His image, little mirrors to reflect God's glory. And like everything else, He made them good. It was a wonderful time to be God's children in God's wonderful world. Here's some of the art as He represents creation, God's good creation. Unfortunately, things didn't stay happy and wonderful for long. On one very bad day, Adam ate from the only tree God had declared off limits. Adam failed. It was a terrible day, the second worst day in the history of the world. I wonder what the worst day in the history of the world is. I know the last week or so feels like some bad days, but there are worse days in the history of the world. We'll talk about those later. A snake had tricked Adam and Eve and told them a lie about the fruit. He said they would be like God if they ate it. But actually, the opposite was true. When they ate the fruit, they found themselves far away from God. They had disobeyed God's word and believed the lie of that devilish snake instead of the truth. Being near to God and having Him draw near to us would not be easy any longer. God was not happy with Adam and Eve, and He wasn't happy with the snake either. God got to put a curse on the man and the woman and the snake and everything else. He kicked Adam and Eve out of the garden paradise He had made for them. It wasn't possible for a people who were so bad to live with a God who is so good. They had to go. You can see them leaving, looking sad and dejected as they leave the garden where God lived. But before they left, God made a promise. You can find that promise actually in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. You should look it up after we're done. He promised that the evil serpent, the devil, would always be at war with Eve and her children. Now, that doesn't sound like a very nice promise. That bad guys and good guys would fight all the time. I mean, who wants to be in a war that never ends? But here's where the good part of the promise comes in. God promised that one of Eve's children would someday, eventually, sooner or later, crush the head of that nasty snake. Nobody knew when or how, but she would have a child to put things right. You can see all those weapons of war and that picture of the snake. I don't know about you, but I do not like snakes. I think all snakes should have their heads crushed. Well, that's the end of chapter 1. So I encourage you, go read Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, and see the great promise. It's really the first promise of the gospel in the Bible, that God's going to send a rescuer, a snake crusher. So thanks for joining with me. I hope you'll come back for the next chapter.